Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, September the 16th, and I'm in a position to call our council meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. I'm going to ask council members to keep their cameras on so that residents can view them during the live stream, and staff delegates, youth councillors will keep their cameras off until it is their turn to speak. And just a reminder for everyone to keep their mics on mute as we proceed through this evening. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Moving on to our land acknowledgement, the municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. I just want to ask council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I note that none were received in advance of tonight's meeting. Seeing none, I'll move on to announcements, updates, and recognitions. I'm going to just start by welcoming everybody who's joining us online this evening through their computers or via telephone. We have opportunities for engagement from the public during our public comment and question period this evening. Instructions on how to raise your hand virtually have been provided on the agenda. So please do take a look at those. And when the time comes, I'll repeat the questions again, and the clerk's going to help us navigate as she has in previous online sessions. So, council members, if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please ensure that you do click the raise hand button and wait for me to call on you. And if I miss you by for whatever reason, I'm sure that the clerk will alert me to the hand up. So just a few updates to share with you. The first is a very proud announcement by the municipality. We're very proud to share that our own councillor, Claire Holloway-Woodwani, has been appointed to the Green Municipal Fund, the GMF, Council as Ontario's municipal representative. The GMF, a program of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, plays a key role in funding and guiding innovative environmental initiatives across the country while advising on issues of sustainability and climate leadership. The appointment is tremendous. It is a huge recognition of the councillor's work, of Claire's efforts in this area. And we are very proud of our councillor, and to have that representation of Port Hope on this body will help us, I think, move towards advancing a resilient and sustainable community here in Port Hope, across Northumberland County, and indeed to have that voice at the table to help steward the future of the country is a great honor. So congratulations, Councillor Claire. We're very, very proud of you. Moving on to a second announcement, which is our ward boundary review. Municipal staff with a consultant are reviewing council composition and ward boundaries. The review will assess how well the current council structure and ward boundaries work for our community. We're hosting in-person sessions this week, and this is really your chance to stop by, learn more, ask questions, share your feedback on how council is structured, and learn about ward boundaries and how they are drawn. So for more information on the project and these sessions, please visit engage.porthope.ca/ward/review. Moving on to the third announcement, and that is our community open house. Learn about potential housing changes. So residents are invited to a community open house to learn about proposed updates to the rules around additional residential units and housing definitions, a really important session. The open house will take place on Thursday, September the 25th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Jack Berger Sports Complex, and this is an opportunity to learn more about proposed changes. Again, ask questions, provide feedback before the amendment is formally considered at a statutory public meeting. For more information, review our project page at engage.porthope.ca/ARU. I also do want to announce that we are working on a very exciting event for our September 30th, Truth and Reconciliation Day at the Capitol Theatre. And this is going to be in partnership with Alderville Nation, with Chief Simpson, with Marcia Smoke, and with the participation of Tom Jackson. It's going to be a very exciting evening of storytelling, singing, dance, and drumming, and we're just still putting the final details on the event, but please stay tuned. The information about the event will be available through the Capitol Theatre, and we'll be putting out municipal announcements around this. We hope that as many of you will attend this evening event as possible. And as always, the donations from the tickets and other donations will go forward to a purpose and a cause that's identified by Alderville Nation, and will be earmarked for a project towards reconciliation efforts that the municipality is a part of. So please stay tuned. It will be a very exciting event. And for those of you who have ever had a chance to hear Tom Jackson sing, he sings like an angel. It's definitely worth joining for that experience in of itself. And he's very generously made changes in some of his plans to be part of this celebration with us. And we're very honored and very privileged to have his presence for that day. Now, moving on to council members, are there any announcements or updates in relation to municipal business that they would like to add? And I see Councillor Pearson's hand went right up. So Adam, please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just thought that this would be a good time to highlight something that's coming up very soon, and that would be spooky season. The municipality has all the different partners around town have a lot of different things coming up in for spooky season. There is the Port Hope Spooktacular and Youth Dance. There's the Pumpkin Parade, downtown trick-or-treating, which is amazing. That's October 24th. I can't wait for that. It's one of my favorite events in the downtown. But then there's also there's two things coming up with the It movies. So we all know that the announcements have happened through Warner Brothers, HBO, that the Welcome to Derry show that was filmed in downtown Port Hope, I believe it comes out, I think it was October 26th. Sorry, it might be the 24th, 26th, can't remember exactly. But we have the It walking tour downtown, and it goes on all the time. And we have screenings coming up. So you'll see a lot of social media posts coming up starting today. And there are two screenings coming up of the first It movie, as well as It Chapter 2 at the Capitol Theatre, October 5th and October 12th. You can get your tickets online at on the Capitol Theatre's website, and you can also see all the fun stuff that's happening for the spooky season at visit Port Hope /things to do /spooky season. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, Adam. And we will be giving out candies at Town Hall that night too. That was a fun experience that I had with the deputy mayor last year, trying to figure out what all the costumes were. But there were tons of kids that actually made it right down from Walton to Town Hall. So it was a really fun evening. Any other announcements from council that you'd like to share this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then to our report from our youth counselors. So I'm now going to welcome our youth counselors, Leah Ferguson and Emily Mountjoy, to present us with a report to council. We'll start with Emily first and then move on to Leah. And so welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. On October 21st, I attended the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting. At the meeting, I learned about Boulevards for Butterflies, which is a nonprofit movement in Port Hope, which is dedicated to transforming overlooked public green spaces into thriving habitats for natural wildflowers and pollinators. I found this to be a very interesting presentation, and I'm grateful to have been able to hear it. I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to get involved with them in the future. Something else that we discussed at the meeting is that changing the age to join committees to 16, which I feel like has some pros and cons. There are some 16-year-olds I know who would excel in something like that, but I also know some 14 and 15-year-olds who would do very well in being involved with the community, as they have great ideas for our community. I myself am only 14 years old, and being more involved in Port Hope has been such a wonderful opportunity so far, and I'm not sure if 16 is the right age to lower the joining age to in some scenarios. I definitely think it should be lowered, though, to let the youth of Port Hope have a say in more things in our community. However, I think that sometimes 15 or 14-year-olds should be allowed to join certain committees. That's my report. I can now take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for actually pointing out that maybe we need to have another look at the age requirements and maybe think about doing more of a range than setting it in stone at 16, because the whole point is to bring in the voices that really want to be part of the conversation. And I think you make a really important point for this council to hear, Emily. So thank you for bringing that to us. Any questions or comments from council to Emily? Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that. And now I'm going to move on to Leah. Would you like to go ahead and make a presentation?
There we go. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Since our last meeting, I attended the Environmental Advisory meeting where I learned about the important role that they play in the community and some of the exciting events they have planned. I enjoyed discussing with Councillor Claire about how the school environment clubs could become more involved in the community. I look forward to the up-and-coming Environmental Advisory meeting. Earlier this month was the movie in the parks, and it was great to see such a large turnout of people, including youth. The park was full of lawn chairs and blankets. Everyone, including myself, really enjoyed the event. It's been 2 weeks since school started up again, and already the school clubs and sports have started. At Port Hope High School, the first sport of the season is tennis, and we are lucky enough that the school has a partnership with the Port Hope Rec Center, which has been kind enough to allow us to use their facilities. It was just this past weekend that the Port Hope Fall Fair took place. I had a great time volunteering at the Elgin Street entrance on Friday, the McCall Street entrance on Saturday, which is where I was selling entry wristbands to visitors to the fair. I really enjoyed working with the fellow volunteers. It was a great way to meet new people. The shuttle was a helpful, youth-friendly initiative that made getting to the fair really easy. I also entered a number of entries in the Fall Fair contest. The fair brought together all the members of the community and had something for everyone to enjoy. There was such a large turnout, it really showed off how much Port Hope has to offer. Coming up, I look forward to attending the Culture Days starting September 20th and going till October 13th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your experiences in particular at the fair. Did everybody see that 398-pound pumpkin that was on display? So that so many wonderful things to do and experience, and thanks for sharing it through your eyes as well. Any comments or questions? I see both Councillor Adam and then Councillor Claire. Councillor Adam, go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. So Leah, you and I have had an opportunity to work at the McCall Street Gate together for many, many years. So in your opinion, this year, do you think that it was busier than previous years? Was it about the same? I know the weather was wonderful. What do you think?
It was really hard to say because most of the traffic was being funneled through the Elgin Street entrance on foot and stuff. It was more of the people in the derby and the people participating in the actual running of the events that came more through McCall. But there was heavy foot traffic left and right, people everywhere.
Good. Thank you.
And Councillor Clare.
Thank you. I held my question, but it's actually a question for both of our youth counselors, if that's okay. And it's actually in keeping with the season and the theme of back to school. I'd like to ask you a bit about the transition to high school and how it affects young people in our community. For French immersion students, what is it like to leave Port Hope and go to Cobourg for high school? And on the flip side, for those who stay, what is the experience when half of their classmates leave our community? How does that split shape the sense of connection among youth?
Thank you, Councillor Clare. I'll turn it over to either one of you, Leah or Emily, that you'd like to comment or answer.
For grade 9s, we had at Port Hope, at least, we had an extra day where there was no other grade 11s, 12s at the school, and we just had a day dedicated to the grade 9s where they could come in, meet their teachers, get introduced to their classes, which I really think helped the transition between the schools, just knowing where you're going, who you're going to see in the morning, and just seeing who you're also surrounded by fellow grade 9s who are also lost.
I'm a French immersion student, so now I attend CCI in Cobourg, and we did the same thing on our first day of school. It was just for grade 9s, which was very nice to get to see the school without it being very full, and they gave us extended class time between classes, so we would be able to find where we're going. However, it is a lot different than staying in Port Hope. A lot of my friends are not French immersion students, and now I don't get to go to school with them, just simply because there isn't French immersion offered in Port Hope right now. So I think that is definitely a good goal to work towards, and I'd love to be able to go to school in Port Hope. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily, and we're working on it very diligently and hoping that everybody in grade 9 can stay in Port Hope and doesn't have to travel outside the community, and that you can be with your friends all the way through high school and do all the kinds of programs and have all the opportunities that that should be available to all high school students in our community. So thank you both for those reports. So we're going to move on now to item number 5, delegations. We have 4 delegations on the agenda tonight. 3 of the delegations have requested extra time, and I've granted this request. Due to the number of delegations tonight, I'll ask the presenters to please be mindful of the time limit, even with the extension. And please do unmute your microphones when you're ready to speak. So the first presentation is from Teresa Decker, Vice President, Nuclear Growth and Sustainability, Ontario Power Generation, regarding our quarterly update on early planning and engagement related to the potential new nuclear generation in Port Hope. And I'm now going to welcome Teresa and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen if you just give me a moment here. All right, hopefully, oh, I don't know that that's showing correctly. Give me a moment. Okay, there we go. Good evening. Again, my name is Teresa Decker, and I am the Vice President of Nuclear Growth and Sustainability at Ontario Power Generation. And I'm really pleased to be here tonight to provide a quarterly update on powering possibilities in Port Hope as we explore the potential for new nuclear generation at OPG's Wesleyville site. So for those that weren't able to attend our last delegation to council in May, thought it would be helpful to start with a bit of context on why we're even thinking about the potential for new nuclear generation at Wesleyville. So it really all starts with some of the work that the Ontario Independent Electricity System Operator does. On an annual basis, at minimum, they forecast what the province's demand for electricity is going to be. And in their most recent projections, actually forecasted an increase of 75% by 2050. So that's pretty substantial. And given that new nuclear or any type of new generation projects do take a bit of time to progress, it is important to start that planning early. So back in the late 2024 timeframe, the Ontario government did ask OPG to begin discussions with Indigenous leaders as well as municipal leaders in Port Hope, in addition to Haldimand County and St. Clair, to really determine whether there might be a willingness to support new clean generation in each of those jurisdictions. And following that, as council would know, we did get a formal expression of interest from the municipality of Port Hope, as well as a willingness to enter discussions from the Mississauga Nations of the Williams Treaties First Nations, and that really allowed for us to start some formal engagement. The other piece that I think is important as a context-setting piece is really to provide a little bit of insight into why the Wesleyville site might be quite an ideal site to host new nuclear. And it comes down to some of the features of the site. It's been municipally zoned and maintained for electricity generation for more than 50 years. Has the potential to co-locate other industries, also has access to really valuable transmission, railways, and roads, which is going to be important if we do progress into construction and operation phases, and has the potential to host up to 10,000 megawatts, which would be enough to power 10 million homes and could go a long way to meeting some of those future demands in the province that I highlighted. If we were to think about potential new nuclear at this site, thought it would also be helpful to provide a bit of visibility into what that roadmap looks like. And so as you can see laid out here, there is a fairly lengthy process to undertaking a new generation project. And where we are is really at the beginning here in the 2025 timeframe. You can kind of see that arrow. So to really kick off the process would be starting an impact assessment, and that would likely unfold over the course of several years. And by the late 2020s is when we would anticipate regulatory approvals that would allow us to progress to the next phase. Subsequent to that, we would then apply for a license to construct. And after a period of review by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, if we were to receive that license to construct, we would then be able to begin site preparation and construction activities in the early 2030s. In and around that same time frame, we would apply for a license to operate, and that would be sort of the last regulatory approval needed to eventually start operating the first unit in that 2040 time frame. So all in all, a fairly lengthy process, and we are right at the beginning. I think the other important thing to note about this timeline is that we view engagement as being an ongoing activity throughout the entire process. We've had some good conversations today, which we'll talk to in a minute, and encourage that continued dialogue and feedback. So on that note, as promised, wanted to provide a bit of an update on some of the engagement work that we've done since we last spoke to Council. And we've had a tremendous opportunity to speak to I think over 3,000 folks in the community about the potential for new nuclear development at Wesleyville. Just this past weekend, we also had a booth at the Port Hope Fall Fair, and we're able to speak to close to 600 visitors, which was wonderful. So in terms of how we've been engaging, we've been doing that in a number of different formats. We've had information booths at some of the community events, as well as sponsored skates and swims. We've also had some engagement opportunities through digital and print media, including through regular updates at our opg.com website. And we've also been engaging on an ongoing basis with local stakeholders as well as community groups. One thing that we're really proud of is that we had an opportunity to participate in a number of community initiatives, including a recent contribution to the Port Hope Walking Clinic fundraising effort. So really an important item for the community and something that we're proud of, and sort of speaks to how OPG thinks about building strong relationships and partnerships with host communities and neighbors. So as I mentioned, engagement is something that we foresee ongoing throughout the course of this potential project. And as we learn more about this potential initiative, we're going to continue to provide updates and encourage that conversation and dialogue. One of the things that thought it might be helpful to cover this evening, as I mentioned, we have been doing quite a bit of engagement, and we do track all of the feedback and questions that we receive as we are speaking to anyone that's interested in this potential project, and wanted to share some of the top examples of questions that we're getting. For a full list, you can definitely check that out. We've got a QR code on each of the upcoming slides, and so that'll provide a little bit more detail. But thought we'd sort of pull out the top three, and wanted to start with the first question around what types of nuclear technology are being considered, what are their potential impacts, what is the timeline for that technology selection. So in response to this, wanted to highlight that over the next several years, we are going to be doing detailed evaluations of a number of potential nuclear technologies. And in doing that, that's going to allow us to come to a decision based on a predefined decision criteria that's going to include efficiency, environmental impact, and economics. So hopefully that helps to address that question. The next question is really around whether there might be potential impact to property surrounding Wesleyville or Lakeshore Road, or even, if we do eventually get into construction, how might that have an impact? And so we wanted to share that we will be doing an initial assessment of existing traffic patterns, use of the roads in the local area, as well as considering how, if we were to progress and do embark on major construction activity, what does that do to access routes, traffic flow, any impacts like noise, etc. And this is really all built into the impact assessment process, which is going to take a few years to undertake. But it is an active part and an important part of that process. Last question that I wanted to highlight is around jobs. So we've heard a number of times, what type of job opportunities are going to be created by the project and how can the community apply for positions? So to give a bit of a sense of some of the conceptual analysis, roughly 1,700 jobs will be supported during design and construction phase and 1,600 during the operations and maintenance phase. And that's on average 15 to 20% increase in overall employment levels. Now, as we progress into different phases of the project, community members will be able to apply for positions in those areas through our website, the community office, or also future job fairs. Hopefully that gives some context on some of the key questions that we are hearing, and happy to continue to have that dialogue. In terms of next steps, really wanted to spend a bit of time highlighting some of the key and next activities that are happening on the project. And as I mentioned in the timeline slide a few slides back, where we're sort of heading next is submission of an initial project description. And what that really does is kick off a multi-year impact assessment process. And that's going to start, we anticipate is starting in Q4 of this year. What that really means is that the impact assessment process is led by the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, and they work very collaboratively with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to really evaluate the potential impact of a project at Wesleyville on environment, safety, health, and the economy. And once that's submitted, it is a public document, so it will be posted on the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada website, as well as, of course, OPG's website. And it does sort of kick off a time frame when the public, anyone that might be interested in, and we would encourage public that might be interested to participate and provide their feedback on the project. In addition, one of the other things that we are really working to progress in parallel with submission of the IPD is initial work at the site. So as you can see highlighted on the slide here, there's a number of studies that we are undertaking to thoroughly evaluate local ecosystems, water quality, wildlife habitats, and breeding areas. And in addition to that, we're also going to be looking at social and economic conditions for the Wesleyville site. Again, all of that is sort of encapsulated in the impact assessment process. And and will feed into to the work that we might need to do in any potential impact assessment effects that we need to mitigate. As I mentioned before, we will continue to provide updates on these items as the project or potential project progresses, and we'd be happy to come back to council and provide a little bit more of an overview of what's in the IPD in a future meeting. A couple of items I wanted to highlight in terms of next steps on engagement. Coming up this weekend, we do have our very well-attended Community Power Expo. And every year we open our doors to local community, community that within the region that really might be interested in OPG's operations or projects, or even potentially valued community partners. And so this year we're going to be hosting both at Pickering and Darlington. And we're going to actually have a nuclear specific area at Darlington where there will be an opportunity to speak to staff for anyone that might be interested in learning more about the project or potential project at Wesleyville. We do, as I mentioned, see quite a few folks from around the region attend on an annual basis. So we're really looking forward to maybe seeing some of the community there. Another item that we're quite excited about is opening of the Port Hope Nuclear Discovery Center. So this facility is located at 115 Toronto Road. Some of you may already have seen it in the community, and we're planned for opening in the fall. It really does have some interesting interactive educational elements about nuclear. It also provides some information on the project and will allow for anyone that comes in to have access to our staff and ask questions as well as provide feedback. The final next step as it relates to engagement, we're going to continue with community events throughout the fall and winter, and that'll include information sessions as well as sponsored swims and skates. So I know I've said it a couple of times now, but we really appreciate the input and feedback, and looking forward to continued conversations. With that, I'll close out now and just want to thank Council for providing me with the opportunity to share this update, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for that update and presentation. I'm going to just kick off with a couple of quick questions for you. One is, it's really impressive to see how much engagement has happened with OPG in the community in such a short period of time. I'm wondering if you've got actually some exact numbers on the number of people that you have interacted with, and anything about the demographics. I know you listed the events and you said that there were significant numbers, but be really helpful to know what those numbers are. And my second question is really around if OPG is working with the province at all to advance new nuclear in Port Hope with the federal government as a nation-building project in a way that it would fall under the auspices of the major project office, and what that might mean in terms of the next steps for this project.
Yes, so thank you for those questions. On the first one, yes, we do track all of our interactions. And so we do have a total number. It's in and around 3,400 total. In terms of demographics, we can provide that breakdown at a future upcoming meeting. You know, whether it's to council or otherwise, we can get some further detail on that. In terms of whether we think about Wesleyville as a project of national importance, I think there's two pieces to that that are important to consider. The first piece, of course, and I think the province would align with this, we do view Wesleyville as being a very key project in terms of meeting that future growth in the province. With that being said, we have been mindful of some of the views of the Indigenous nations and communities, in particular the Mississauga nations, who we are also doing quite a bit of engagement with. And we wouldn't want to get ahead of their views on whether, or Port Hope's views on whether this would be something to put forward as a project of national interest. So I think from our perspective, we want to make sure we're aligned with key stakeholders and the rights holders on whether that goes forward. With that being said, we have provided some suggestions and recommendations that are that could be considered in general for all projects to help advance not only Ontario's interests in terms of energy growth, but even Canada's energy sovereignty. So we're sort of doing both of those items in tandem.
Thank you. Turning it over to my colleagues. Anybody have any questions or comments for Teresa at this point? Seeing none, that means that it was a very thorough and informative update, and we do really appreciate your commitment to coming and doing these quarterly reports to Council. They're very valuable to us, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so the recommended motion is identified on the agenda, and it's to receive the delegation for information. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. So we'll move on to our next delegation. Scott Cameron, General Manager, Historic Waste Program Management Office, a CNL regarding quarterly update on the PHAI. And Scott, you've got 15 minutes and welcome.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update on the Port Hope Area Initiative, in particular the Port Hope project. A lot has changed in the last several months since we last spoke, and we're excited to share some of that progress. The picture being displayed is our Waterworks West Recreational Center. I'm pleased to say that the site has been fully restored with some additional features, thanks to ACL and CNL, and we're looking forward to the public using that area in the next several weeks. Next slide, please. There we go. I would like to take this opportunity as a CNL representative and acknowledge that this Port Hope Area Initiative is situated in the traditional treaty lands of the Williams Treaties First Nations, more specifically the Gunshot Treaty, negotiated between the Crown and the Mississauga Nation during the 1780s, and is represented today by the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also recognize that these lands are home to Indigenous peoples from across the province, Canada, and CNL is grateful for the opportunity to work on these traditional and culturally sensitive waterways. Next slide, please. This evening, I would like to give you a snapshot of the work already completed on our larger sites. This will show that the bulk of the waste in our long-term storage facility has been safely put to bed for many years. I will also highlight the feedback that we're hearing from the residents about their own properties, cleanup, and share operational changes to address some of those concerns. Next slide, please. Overall, as the peak construction season ends, we are pleased to share that just over 2.4 million tons of waste has been removed from a community and is now in safe storage. As you can see from the graphic displayed, there are only a few large projects remaining complete, and those we expect to be completed in 2026. One of the major projects that we're incredibly proud of is our Harbor Center Pier. The complexity of that project makes this being study of interest both nationally and internationally. And we're pleased to say that dredging has now been complete with remediation on the center pier 90% complete. You will see over the next several months the infrastructure complete, equipment and barges being removed, and restoration is planned for 2026. Work continues in the Highland Drive landfill, and the South Ravine will be expected in 2026. That's okay. Next slide. The Alexander Street Ravine has now been restored. It is important to highlight the work of this site because it is an incredible example of environmental stewardship between CNL and the municipality. We work together with municipality staff with a vision to save considerable percentages of the trees. With the application of a special circumstance, marking the area as one of the most environmental significant areas and potential habitat for species, we are pleased to follow through the restoration and planted 800 trees and shrubbery. That work together saved a significant amount of the forestry that did not have to be removed. Next slide, please. West Beach, the naturalized area is completed and should be fenced removed in the next several weeks. And it's great to see the playground that will be enjoyed by kids of all ages. Another portion of the beach is still fenced off as we plan our revitalization for this area and work very closely with our First Nations partners, with the vision to restore that area to many years ago. The reclamation will be completed pending fences, and the naturalized area will be completed near the end of 2026. Next slide, please. Lions Park. A lot of complicated work went into this by our contract partners and CNL, and it's a highlight of one of our major projects to be completed. It was opened in May of this year, and it was a great example of Port Hope Area's initiative of creating a future and a space for the community for generations to enjoy. Next slide. Well, the cleanup of our sites has been a major focus and going relatively well. We've heard the frustrations from our residents about the cleanup of their private properties. CNL committed to council and held a town hall earlier this year. A lot of residents continue to express their concerns about the length of time of the work on their sites, as well as the impact of the trees and built infrastructure. Next slide, please. I want to take this opportunity to remind residents that they have options. Options to participate in the cleanup is voluntary. There's also several levels of participation on the spectrum. We continue to work, we look at ways to work with each of our residents in their property cleanup. Property owners can reduce the scope of their work on their property in general and provide options to the team, while minimizing the impact on their property, their features, and residents through the use of special circumstance. I can commit to you, we have heard your feedback, and we are working hard to work together to complete this environmental cleanup on your properties. Next slide. We are in alignment. I've heard you loud and clear from our town hall. We are going to work with the community, and we all have the same focus of expected outcomes for this project. As we move forward, our aim is to reduce timelines and the impact on private properties. One of the key messages was coming out of our town hall for residents is the gap around three weeks between digging, sampling, and into the restoration packages. Next slide, please. Out of the feedback in town halls and working with our small scale sites executive team, we've taken 4 major initiatives. Remediation, verification, revision. It's to speed up the work between the time of sampling through our laboratories and the time of backfilling. And this is to be done without safety. We have several thousand data points to look at a verification strategy to speed up the timeline from when we complete digging through our labs into restoration of your property. Our radiation protection program update has been completed and submitted to the CNSC. The radiation protection program was the right program for our major projects around the Harbor Center Pier and other major cleanup areas. Through working with the leadership and executive team and our subject matter experts, we submitted to the CNSC a revised radiation protection plan for small scale sites and private properties. This will reduce the complexity of working through them and dealing with the risk-based analysis through the property assessments. Small volume sites have been revisited. There's a key team within CNL that has taken this project on and has completed a pilot project internal. We see we can have opportunities to take more sites in a simulated manner and work with our contract partners and provide less disruption to the residents. The last one is a CNL performed restoration through fence, sheds, rebuilds, and some qualities. It allows our main contract partners to focus on large restoration projects, while a CNL team of experts can come behind them and return the property essentials with fences, gates, and others the residents expect at that time. Next slide. Another clear message of the town hall was our communications. Our communications team works hard every day communicating through the residents, town councils, and others. Oh, we need to enhance your trust with CNL by demonstrating our responsiveness, provide greater clarity in progress and oversight, reduce uncertainty by explaining options to our homeowners, improve the transparency through access tools, strengthen relationships with residents, municipal council, community partners, and our real estate sector. Next slide. What are we focusing on? We are focusing on enhancing our communication. Key improvements with our residents. We have added a pre-restoration meetings to align outcomes with property owners and align on expectations before work commences. We have closed those gaps from your R&R agreement to the time we work. We've improved our community newsletter with timelines, visuals, frequently asked questions, and cleanup criteria information. We're looking at improving our website and social media updates to clearly highlight our progress. We are developing a new resident portal, working very closely with the municipality of Port Hope for property-specific information, and that website is expected to be up and running for our residents in 2026. We're working to increase frequency of communications to reduce uncertainty on planned outages and work going on in your property. Next slide, please. It was clear at the town hall to me that resident involvements must be broadened. We will broaden our engagement. We're working with resident roundtables to engage with residents and local groups when we have work going on in their area. We will hold specific sessions with real estate and business groups to address property values and income impact areas of concerns with our residents. Feedback surveys and post-restoration with residents and homeowners. Enhanced staff training with consistent frontline communications across companies, and that means our key contract partners. All of our partners will be able to answer the same questions to all of our residents when they have concerns. Next slide. One thing I would like to talk about is our community engagement, in which I'm proud of my team. Our field team works very hard to work in communications and talk about what we do. That is being recognized worldwide. We had a great opening at Lions Park. I was challenged by the community, and I'm proud to say that CNL and our contract partners worked closely and raised over $10,000 excuse me, for the Port Hope Walk-in Clinic. And I'm proud of my staff taking that challenge on. Internationally, Port Hope long-term storage facilities being recognized. And we had an official delegation from Saudi Arabia to look at the program process that we put in place to safely store that waste for hundreds of years. The last one was a salmon run. I enjoyed that myself and really look forward to it. And I definitely look forward to the pink party next year also. Next slide. Make wish. Thank you. Merci. And now I'll turn over to the chair for questions.
Thank you very much, Scott, for that update and the presentation. And I do also want to thank you from this chair for taking up the challenge to contribute to the Port Hope Walk-in Clinic. Just like OPG, you both came through with $10,000 donations, and we very much appreciate that. Now into the more of the nitty-gritty of some of the questions and comments, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, starting with Councillor Adam.
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott. Always great to have you here, even virtually. Good presentation. I appreciate everything. I have a few questions. question number one, you sort of answered it, so I'm just going to ask for a little bit of clarity on your answer too. So when are you anticipating the new portal to actually go live? I know you said 2026, but are you meaning at the start of 2026 or at the very end of 2026? What's your anticipation on that one?
We are working very closely with the municipality. And I first have to say, if it wasn't for the municipality's teamwork and vision for the same thing, we would never get off the ground. But the target is Q1 of 2026. We've had several meetings with our contract partners. They're working on it. We've made presentations on what the portal would look like. Some of the internal questions we've got is we do have an older generation organization. So one of my questions was, what is the IT support that those teams will have? If, according to my dad, who lives just down the street, calls in for support. But 2026 Q1, and my next update, I will have a firm schedule for you when that was implemented, including the training and what's needed and how we're pulling that out.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you. Madam Chair, is it okay if I do 2 more questions, or do you want me to pass it off?
No, absolutely. Maybe put both of the questions forward and then let Scott respond.
Sounds great. So, so the next 2 questions I have for you. The first one is private residential cleanups. So I'm assuming that you guys have a lot of metrics, a lot of data about all the different cleanups that you've done.
Yes.
So if we were to look back 5 years ago, what would be the average time frame on a cleanup of a residential property? And then fast forward to today, what is the average time frame for a cleanup today? And then with the next changes, what are you anticipating it to be in the future, let's say by next year? That's one question. And the second question, it's again about residential cleanups. So the special circumstances, if someone were to use a special circumstance to, let's say, opt out on a tree or whatever it may be, if in the future, let's say the individual sold the house and there is something needed to be done with that tree, who's responsible for that in the future for that cleanup?
I'll go to your first question about timelines. That's a very good question. The data 5 years ago, I would say, is inconsistent enough, and you put COVID on top of that. I really, as an outage manager from, my past role, it'd be very tough to say that's a solid data point because there's too much variables into that. Going from this year to next year, I can give you one data point that we have looked at and looking at is the RV SOP process. We believe once that's rolled out through the CNSC approved, we will remove 3 weeks of timeline on each property. So I'll give you a good example. Right now, if we forecasted forward in the same number of properties, we'd save roughly 250 weeks of work that would turn into more production time on other people's properties. So the last 5 years, I've asked that to Councillor Adam. It's just way too many variables in there to give me a solid data point to show progress year. If you put COVID into it, I'm a way ahead, but I think it's an irrelevant data point for us at this point.
Okay, would it be easier if we said, let's say, last year to this year for a comparative?
Last year, this year, we are performing more properties. I've not finished, so we have not pulled a year-over-year data, but I will take that back, Council, and I will add that to my next update to Council. So I'll share that information with Council and across the board. Special circumstance, we could talk about 6 hours on that one. It's property to property. If the homeowner decides I don't want to be in at all, and there's a new property owner that buys it, we can renegotiate, but there's also a timeline on that. If it gets to the point where we physically can't get to the property because of other restrictions, the special circumstance remains with us for probably, the timelines in the legal agreement, but really that is property to property, and we discuss with each resident or homeowner as we go through that.
And what is that timeline, sorry?
Well, the timeline right now currently is the limit of 20 years and 30 years for liability that we receive, but we've heard very clearly from the public and the residents around their concerns with that, and we're working very closely with the government of Canada to revisit that, and is there opportunities to support the residents a little bit farther, but that's a down the road discussion, sir.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate.
Councillor Clare, over to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Scott, for these updates. I will say it is good that we're starting to see some measures being taken, that I can see clear alignment with feedback that you've had at past meetings and then through the town hall as well. So thank you for sharing those. I wondered if you could talk a bit about compliance letters. And when residents can reasonably expect to have those letters in hand, and looking at both those where properties have been fully remediated and the work's completed, as well as those where the testing has already given the property a clean bill with no remediation required. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clare. That is a hot topic with our residents, and it is a very fair question. I'll go with properties that first have been tested. We have about approximately 1,300 properties that, in my personal words, I use it likely clean. We've done the testing, we've done the radon pucks, we've done that, and the documentation's come back that there's very, very unlikely condition they would have contamination on it. Due to resources and scheduling and our priorities, we have parked those. We are currently looking through those programs and see if we can have opportunities to release neighborhoods at once. But my priority right now with as staff is the working on the remediated properties. I've heard clearly from residents when we've worked in an area and cleaned their property, they have not got a letter. So currently I've challenged our team and they're looking at having an interim compliance letter. So Councillor Clare, if we happen to come on your property and we cleaned up your property, but we're still working in the neighborhood, we would issue a temporary compliance letter that said, yes, your property has been remediated. And with the, however, we're still working in the area. And until we finish in that neighborhood, then we would issue the compliance letters. I have challenged my staff to end of year, start putting the new program in place. And I would like to see some compliance letters issued and temporary compliance letters issued by the end of year, because I want to test the process, get the residents' feedback to see if we've hit their expectations.
Thank you, Scott. I've got a question for you, and it's not on the residential side so much because my colleagues have covered off some of the topics, and I know that there's other things that are constantly in the works on that file. But I wonder if you could share with us how the remediation of Center Pier has gone and how you've been able to significantly shorten the timelines for the completion of that project. If you can just give us a little bit of a high overview of what that took and how it's all come together and what we can expect over the next 12 months.
I would say giving the opportunity to the people on the shop floor, the trades, the field leadership and the project teams to put innovation in there. We want to take a look at it. Can we get dredging done quicker? We turn to our contract partners instead of, I would say, directing them to give us feedback. And one there was is bring in 5 other drilling crews or 5 barges into that area. It was a dance. It was very complicated to work through that, but the project teams put together a program. And I'm proud to say when I took this project over from the last GM to today, that team saved 18 months on schedule because we allowed our contract partners to be, inventive and not let bureaucracy get in the way or a fixed schedule and challenge on both sides of the fence. WSP is a phenomenal contract partner, and they brought a lot of opportunities with their skill set from around the world, how we could, advance schedules safely. And we worked with them. We opened the opportunities for them to try it. A couple were not successful, but the overall is those contract partners and the project team under Mark Owen's watch got 18 months back on schedule. So we're looking happy to next year handing a clean slate over to the municipality for future growth for generations. I think it's going to be an incredible piece of property that Port Hope needs to be proud of.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for your leadership in taking on the challenge of shortening those timelines and providing the leadership on the ground for this actually to come together. I think we're all looking forward to seeing what will happen there in the future. So really appreciate your leadership, especially on that file. Any other questions or comments from around the table? Seeing none, the recommended motion is on the agenda to receive this delegation for information. So can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Less. Any further comments? Councillor Clare, was that just all in favor going up? Okay, all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much again, Scott, for the update and for the discussion.
Thank you for having me. Good night.
Right. Okay, we're going to move on to one last delegation before we take a break, and that is 5.3, Peter Drouar, regarding the use of Viceroy plant for making prefabricated homes to help solving housing shortages. And Peter is joining us this evening and does have 15 minutes to speak. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you. I'd just like to make one quick comment. I'm rather hard of hearing, and if I end up not accessing a question, it's not because I want to ignore it, it's because I didn't hear it. And in that case, what I might do is ask you to perhaps repeat that. With that in mind, first, thank you for enabling my presentation. My goal is why and how to move forward. Most of what I'm going to say is a combination of actual fact and my interpretation of what is in fact available. With that in mind, Tanya did ask me to provide you with some background information on myself and what I do. The first point is I have many years of participation and leadership in financial services, including working with governments. And my principal job is managing a little company located here in the business of advising and participating in creative imaginatives for smaller companies, particularly in smaller communities. I obtained an honors economics BA from the University of BC and did a year of postgraduate work at McGill. The relevant experience, and I won't really go through the details, is having been responsible for the Ontario Hydro Pension Fund division and also worked at OMERS, then the largest Canadian public sector fund. In addition, I was head of research in the Bank of Nova Scotia, and so the sum total is that beyond those, I have significant community orientation, participation, and leadership, including a member of the Economic Development Advisory Committee of Port Hope and president of the largest community association in Canada. Now, being in the business of independent thinking and the creation of ideas leads me into my presentation. I'm quite familiar with the early history of Viceroy. Where I got to meet the creating the original owner and creator of Viceroy, Gaylord Lindell. I not only interviewed him extensively, but also visited the plant where I suspect that not that much has changed over the years. They basically are carpenters under one roof and using a relatively modest amount of technology. The idea goes back to the Prime Minister's statement when he said, "We want to build more houses and are prepared to pay for them." He also said manufactured modular has actual implementation opportunities. The details were promised, but have not yet been published. The next trigger really was that Port Hope has a head start with a Viceroy facility and a chance to become a leader for creating desirable, non-intrusive, and well-paying jobs and taxes. How to implement that will be answered by a chosen developer or manufacturer, which we're working on a list for them, although obviously based on the fact that we're not industry participants. We have also been working on potential candidates for developers. And the possible role of Port Hope, which of course depends on council. The fact is that the plant is here and subject to rules and local rules and regulations. And your support, even if non-monetary, provides credibility for a winning strategy. The fact is, the more groups working together, the better chance of success. And that concludes my prepared remarks. And I'm ready to move on to the next step. whatever that might be.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, Peter. We really appreciate it, and I can see we already have some hands up for some questions and discussions with you. I'm really pleased that you did come forward to do this delegation after we had the meeting in my office, and really appreciate you being with us this evening. So turning it over to you, Councillor Clare.
Thank you. And thank you, Peter, for your remarks this evening. I just, no question for you, just to say that it's, I agree with you. I think it's an opportunity we should be aware of, and I'd be interested to hear from staff, perhaps, offline, about what role the municipality might be able to play in that. And also just to let you know that there have been discussions about that and the Viceroy facility at the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing, including with some locals to Northumberland who have looked at that around or have considered that as a potential for the future of potentially even a nonprofit or social enterprise approach to development of modular housing. So thank you so much for keeping this on the radar and for coming and speaking with us this evening about it. Very important.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Before I move on to Councillor Adam and Councillor Todd, I do have just a really quick question around the Intermunicipal Task Force. Is there a role for the public to be playing in relation to the task force? And thinking in particular for Peter and his interests?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, Peter, and maybe that's something that we can maybe get the clerk to connect us to you about that, because we have had members of the community come as delegations, almost unofficial delegations, to task force meetings to talk about ideas that we might want to look at across the county, and we'd certainly welcome those discussions.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Moving on to Councillor Adam.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to thank you, Peter, for coming forth with this delegation. I think it's wonderful that you have reached out to us. Your economics background is very valuable when it comes to these type of things. And I think there was one point of what you said there that just reached out to me so much. The fact that this is about collaboration and working with others and having everybody in together. Very similar to what Councillor Clare was just saying about the task force as well. So I just wanted to make the comment of thank you so much for bringing this forth. Wonderful delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adam, and Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for your presentation. I co-chair the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness with Councillor Clare, and your presentation really caught my attention. It's certainly something that's being discussed. My question goes back to, you made a comment in your presentation that you had a relationship with the founder of Viceroy, and I was curious as to whether you still have connections with Viceroy that you can speak to, or that are still active?
I guess perhaps two parts. One is the plant is, the rumor has been that the plant is actually vacant. They do some business from there, but completely unrelated to manufacturing homes. The second part is that there is a rumor that they at one point contemplated selling the plant, and a rather, as far as I can tell, not being in the real estate business, outrageous, most likely outrageous price. And I don't know whether that's subject to negotiation or whether they've actually been offered something and turn it down as being an unsatisfactory bid. The third part is operational, which, as I mentioned, should be more properly addressed by somebody who's actually in the development and/or manufacturing slash modular business. I hope that answers what your question was driving at.
Yes, I believe it does.
Thank
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And I think the one thing that is really consistent in this conversation is I think we all have a real appreciation of how valuable that property is in the municipality and really wanting to see it used for its maximum potential, and that potential somehow, of course, being tied into our strategic priorities, and housing is definitely at the top of that list. So thank you again, Peter, for the delegation, and hoping that the clerk can connect you to the intermunicipal task force for some further brainstorming conversation. And I'm sure that some of the ideas that you brought forward will also be considered by municipal staff as we move forward. So at this point, the recommended motion is identified on the agenda to receive this delegation for information. And can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Todd. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none.
I just perhaps wanted to add, thank you for the kind words.
It was a pleasure having you here with us this evening, Peter. Thank you. And at this point, I will take a vote. All in favor? Thank you. And that is passed unanimously. So at this point in the meeting, we will recess for 10 minutes and reconvene just before 8 p.m. Thank you very much. Hey everyone, we will reconvene our council meeting at this point at 7:57 p.m. Our next delegation is Greg Burns, Garden Hill Neighborhood Group, regarding water security and zoning, 3852 Ganaraska Road. And this delegation has 15 minutes. So I now welcome Greg Burns to speak.
Thank you, and I'll ask staff if they could put up the first slide. That would be appreciated. Again, thank you for the opportunity to address council. The following key items are going to be covered in this presentation. We're going to talk about climate change, water security, Block 102, water demand, resident concerns, hydrology issues, groundwater flow, recharge, mitigation, and the precautionary principle. Next slide, please. While urban Port Hope residents drinking water from Lake Ontario have no lack of drinking water, the same is not true for rural residents. This summer, we were in the midst of a recognized drought. According to the National Agroclimate Risk Report, at the end of July, 70% of Canada's agricultural landscape was classified as abnormally dry or in drought. Frequent daytime highs of 25 to 30 degrees have accelerated evaporation, further reducing surface water. The combination of low rainfall and high heat has stressed surface water levels, slowed groundwater recharge, and impacted aquatic health. Many local streams are now flowing below minimum summer levels, including the one that runs through my own property. With forecasts calling for continued warm, dry weather, these conditions are expected to persist well into the future. Local water haulers have been working nonstop, and almost every rural resident knows someone whose well has either run dry or are worried about their own state of their own well. Next slide, please. Block 102, which is the apartment complex in the proposed subdivision, should not be allowed. According to your own Port Hope zoning bylaw, multi-residential multi-unit residentials shall have municipal water and sewer connections. This is not a reality in the rural area. There is an insufficient lot size per the zoning bylaw, which is inadequate to support the apartment building, parking, loading, refuse, turning facility, snow storage, septic system, and backup septic system. The Greer-Galloway report only tested the well for the complex as one residential unit, not possibly 21 units. The report then states that the facility might require 2 wells as well as a water storage facility. As well, we have pointed out to staff on several occasions that the Port Hope official plan requires a minimum setback of 30 meters from all watercourses. Therefore, the proposed extension of Frost Avenue to the multi-unit facility is non-compliant. Next slide, please. As you can see from the graph on this slide, without Block 102, the apartment complex, there will be a 24.8% increase in water consumption. If you include the complex, it goes up to 42% increase in water taking ends up being the result. And most Garden Hill residents rely on this same aquifer for their drinking water. Next slide, please. This slide is self-explanatory on why residents are so concerned about this development. And I'm going to read the key parts of this slide. Historically, Garden Hill residents noticed a degradation of water quality and quantity when the LaRose subdivision was initially built. Both the LaRose and original residents noticed a degradation of water quality and quantity when the Woodlands subdivision was built. And interestingly enough, no survey of existing residents and wells was undertaken by the developer on this property. Next slide, please. As noted on this slide, there are multiple concerns regarding the hydrology report prepared for this development, from contamination to supply. If there's so much water as claimed by the developer, then why is there a need for a water storage cistern for the apartment complex? There is supplementary information contained in the handout that we have provided to council, and please take the time to review these details as they are critical factors when making your final decision. Next slide, please. The topography of the site varies widely in elevation, yet groundwater has been found just below the surface. There are also wetlands and vernal pools. Any site alteration will wipe out this undulating landscape and will change groundwater flow, a concern for all of those on dug wells who rely on groundwater for their drinking water. And if you just look at the on a map, Mill Street North runs adjacent to that property, and the majority of those individual property owners have dug wells. So there's a major concern there. Next slide, please. In order to secure a safe water supply for the future, there also needs to be the ability for rainwater and snowmelt to infiltrate and recharge the aquifer. The existing recharge is not that great because of the soil composition, and there will be a significant reduction in infiltration because of all of the impervious surfaces that they're planning: houses, garages, the apartment complex with its parking lot, roads, swimming pools, and stormwater ponds. It will result in a negative loss. Next slide, please. There is no data whatsoever on the size or current drawdown of the aquifer or what the drawdown will be with this over 42% increase, and not even accounting for our changing drier climate. Next slide, please. And to take a moment to read this slide because it's critical in the comment I'm about to make. A worst-case scenario might involve the replacement of down-gradient dug wells with drilled wells, say 3 well replacements and/or provision of bottled water. A reasonable assurance would be in the neighborhood of $50,000, with this amount reduced progressively once post-construction monitoring confirms the prediction of no adverse effect to neighboring wells. Bottled water, seriously? And this is the case only if residents can prove at a great cost that the development is the cause of their well failure. This is absolutely an insult to our rural residents. Next slide, please. I'd like to read the motion that was approved on November 7th of 2023 at a council meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Port Hope direct staff to include a sub-watershed study for the hamlet of Oseka and the Garden Hill area in the 2024 annual budget deliberations for discussion and consideration. And be it further resolved that the amount to be considered is $150,000 to $225,500 over 2 years for Oseka, with an annual cost estimate of $75,000 to $108,750, and that a request for quote on potential costs of a similar study in Garden Hill also be included. Considering the possible long-term impact on all the residents of Garden Hill, why has there not been any movement on Garden Hill since the passing of this motion in 2023? Garden Hill, quite frankly, has 10 times the number of residences compared to Oseka. It's absolutely critical that this council authorizes a comprehensive watershed study of the Garden Hill area prior to this planning application even being considered. And we suggest that you make appropriate use of the Ward 2 LLRW funds to pay for it. I'd like to wrap up this presentation with the following comments. The developer's draft plan submissions would require numerous zoning bylaw and official plan amendments in order to be approved. And to date, residents have not been advised what amendments are acceptable and which are not. We are very concerned about the potential negative impact on our historical hamlet. Proposed phasing limits, as well as the road network layout, implies a phase 2 will proceed in the future, and this should not be permitted due to the ANSI and the environmental barriers. Our group has provided countless reports and documents during the past 3.5 years highlighting our apprehension related to this proposed subdivision. I note with interest that on Council's agenda later tonight, there's a motion dealing with the municipality's quality management system. While Council rightly prioritizes the quality management system for Port Hope's urban water supply, we must not overlook the rural communities like Garden Hill. Clean, safe, and reliable drinking water is not a luxury, it's a basic right. The QMS operation plan outlines strong commitments to sustainability, public education, and environmental responsibility. These values should apply across all areas of our municipality, not just within town limits. Council is now fully aware of the many concerns we have about the proposed subdivision and its negative impact on water security for our residents. We hope that this presentation will provide you with the information you need to make an informed decision at the time that this planning application is brought forward by staff for Council's consideration. I'd like to express our thanks for your time and patience related to our many concerns. I'm now available to take questions or hear comments from Council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for the presentation. And before I turn it over to everybody for a fulsome Q&A and discussion, I just did want to share that there is going to be a subwater study coming in our coming budget in the amount of $225,000. So that is going to be coming forward for council consideration in the coming weeks. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to council for any questions or comments in relation.
Just for clarification, when you said the watershed study, is that for Garden Hill?
It will be including Garden Hill, correct?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So now I'm going to turn it over to council for questions and or comments, starting with our deputy mayor.
Thank you. So first, more than anything, I just want to thank you for your delegation and for coming forward. I don't have a lot of questions on the particulars that you presented. We've had a lot of conversations over the past years now at this point. Just one quick question. When we're talking about water quality and the well quality, I think it's very important, as you noted, that rural residents are responsible for reporting our own water quality and testing our own wells to ourselves. We're responsible for that. So with that said, you did note in one of your slides that residents noticed in the past with each development that their water quantity and quality has changed. So I guess my question for you would be, and you may not be able to answer this on behalf of all residents, but are residents doing those water tests now as a baseline so that if the water quality changes, you do have that information as proof in the future?
I think I can speak for a number of people. I can't speak for all residents, obviously, but
Yeah.
I know of many residents consistently test their water to make sure that it's safe and not contaminated. Just to give you an example of from a water flow point of view, there is a resident on Mill Street North who has a dug well. And I can't speak to the technical aspects, but basically it's a shaft that has been placed down into his dug well that has various levels. And there's a monitoring system at the top of that well that indicates exactly where the water level is at that point in time. As of yesterday, he has just less than 100 liters of water. So he and his wife are literally showering every 3 days. I don't want to be rude, but also the use of flushing the toilets kind of thing. These are the things that you have to be so cautious about. There are wells in the La Rose subdivision, an example where, and again, I don't know the technical term for it, but 2 or 3 years ago, water was spouting, okay, out of this particular spout, if you will, onto their lawn consistently 24 hours a day. The last 2 years, that is gone. There's none of that happening at all. So there's some major concerns about what's happening relative to not only the quality, but the quantity of water as it exists today. And that's why we're so concerned about when you add 43 estate homes in a 21-unit apartment building, what is going to happen to that aquifer? It's going to have major repercussions. And I should add, and it was interesting, this was brought forward at a meeting just a short time ago. What about those people who buy one of those 43 estate homes? They have no idea of the history leading up to today of what's been happening relative to, is there enough water to flush a toilet, have a shower, have drinking water, etc. They won't know that until it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, I've got Councillor Less, followed by Councillor Clare. Councillor Less.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Greg. We've seen that presentation before. We've heard the concerns before. We had a court case, which we won, and the court case, within 2 weeks, the rules were changed by the Ontario government, and the rug was pulled out from under us in terms of the ANSI and the importance of it. And that was just poo-pooed and put to the side. When we have something of this major importance that's going to affect us years into the future, we'd better get it right, because we don't have the facility to run a pipe from the 401 up to Garden Hill. Okay, so we got to get this right. If it's the wrong site, it's the wrong site. And no matter what people try to gloss over, we just can't go based on the decision that was rendered down to us. So I would suggest, we've got a new CAO, we're going to have a new town solicitor. Maybe we have to give them time to drill down into this problem. I'm not too concerned about a September 30th arbitrary date set by the government. And if we have to, we'll reinstitute a different lawsuit on this project. But definitely, we cannot go ahead based on the information we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Les, and I'm going to pass it on to Councillor Clare and then Councillor Darrell in the order that hands went up.
Thank you, Mayor Elena, and thank you, Greg, for bringing forward the concerns from the Garden Hill Community Group. I do appreciate this has been a really challenging and frustrating process, I think probably for all involved. And I think this situation really shows how council is sometimes limited when we're responding to legacy files, which in this case had already become a legal matter before even reaching our council table and before we even had a chance to discuss it publicly. But as Councillor Les has explained, given that it is still a legal matter that's wrapping with the Ontario Land Tribunal, we're still not really in a position to discuss this evening because we need to understand the implications of that OLT decision and how they're going to rule on the remaining conditions. I will just say, though, that for me, this really underscores, this whole experience underscores the importance of building relationships with developers who will work with us in good faith to advance our community goals. And hopefully we don't find ourselves in this with this kind of experience on future files.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Great points. And moving on to Councillor Darrell.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Lena. I just want to say that I agree with everything Councillor Les said, and I can personally attest to the fact of the how climate change is affecting well water levels. I have lived in Garden Hill, I've lived Osaka, and now I just live outside of Port Hope. And since about 2019, every year I've had to get water delivered for my wells. So yeah, water is definitely, I think, on the forefront of this decision. And like Les says, we have to get it right. And as I've said before, I don't agree with amending zoning bylaws for developers for maximum profitability. That's what I'm going to say about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darrell, for sharing that. And Councillor Todd, and then I'm going to actually turn the chair over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. And Greg, thanks so much for the presentation, both to you and to the group that you represent. I really much valued the education, the detail that's in it. I think it's really important that we take a good amount of time to understand all the facets of what's going on with this particular development. I think it also, for me, raises probably a broader issue that will need to be discussed by council at a future date, which is in light of climate change and the way in which things are changing in the environment with available water in rural areas. We'll need to rethink our responsibility towards how we go about development and the onus of responsibility of doing these tests, shifting more towards the municipality than relying on the developers who are going to come forward with this stuff. And so, we'll continue to be diligent, I think, on the Garden Hill, but also I just think it's important that there's a larger topic that we need to be discussing, or there's maybe a bigger elephant in the room that we'll need to be tackling, and I'll just lay that probably just out for consideration as we move forward. So thank you again, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And at this point, I'd like to pass over the chair to the Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so with that, I'm assuming that you have something that you would like to say or a motion that you would like to bring forward. So go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do think that it's very rare as a council to have a group that comes forward to us consistently with such valuable evidence-informed information to help with our awareness and our education. And we're at a really critical crossroads with this particular file. And so rather than us receiving this for information, which was posted on the agenda, I would like to put forward a motion, and this resonates back with a couple comments that were made by council, both in relation to having a new CAO in place, requiring a little bit more further reflection on what our options are and how we can move forward in a slightly different direction on this file, that the delegation from Greg Burns, Garden Hill Neighborhood Group, be referred to the Director of Development Services and in particular our new CAO for further review, consideration, and discussion. And happy to have any revision on that language, but the idea is for this to go back to our staff, in particular under the new leadership of our newly appointed CAO, to look at this and strategize and investigate and allow this council to have more information and further discussion on how to move forward on this file. So Councillor Todd, I'm not chairing, so sorry.
No problem. Okay, so Councillor Todd has his hand up. So I guess I'll ask the question, is it discussion or are you seconding this motion at this point?
No, at this point, I have a question for the mayor regarding the motion.
Mm-hmm.
May I
Go
ask?
ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'm just curious as to whether or not you have any interest in putting a timeline or a date or towards that motion.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I was hoping that we could have a conversation at this table around what the council might see as reasonable, and also having the CAO online, just hearing back from him and from staff in terms of what is realistic from their perspective as well. So
thank you. Yeah, and can I just add, so I appreciate your motion. Referring it to staff, maybe we can hear from the CAO what possibly we could expect in return as well. So if you want to speak to that, CAO Mike, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I just want to start that I had the great pleasure of meeting with Mr. Burns and his group to have these conversations. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time. We acknowledge that it's a complex file and that we need to really understand it better. Yes, being new on the role, and Director Adams is relatively new. Understanding the history, there's complex history behind this, and this is various submissions and information that's been put forward and how it's been handled and who's received what. So we're still working our way through that. We are looking at those tools, at all those tools that we have at our fingertips to see how to manage this file. Just as Councillor Less pointed out, we want to make sure we get it right as well. So, we want to make sure we're advising council properly. So we are really looking forward to setting up something with Mr. Burns and the group in the very, very near future. We do want to respond to the OLT. We have until September 30th to submit draft conditions and things like that. So that is the tool and the mechanism that we have to leverage. And we are seeking legal counsel as well to try and understand what other points that we can leverage as well to make sure we come up with a reasonable, equitable solution to this complex situation. So appreciate your time, Mr. Burns, and we look forward to meeting with you in the very near future.
Thank you. If I could just add one more comment, a real quick comment, and that is our group would very much appreciate the opportunity to be engaged in this process in whatever way we can do to help you get through this.
Okay, and that is noted. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions or comments from the rest of council? And if not, then we'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor Todd.
Perhaps my same question, but for CAO, as far as timing and so on.
Sorry, yeah, I think we're aiming for the end of September to try and meet some of those deadlines for the OLT submissions that we're required to do.
it's not that far away. It's about 2 weeks away, so we will endeavor our best. We still need some legal opinions on if we can extend timings and things like that. So I would say probably absolute latest, like mid-October. And I'm looking at Director Adams for a little bit of input. I think that seems plausible.
Director McAdams, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
We'll be thank you, and through the chair, we'll be seeking to convene a meeting and discuss as soon as possible, because we will need to respond to OLT's order by September 30th. So we would be able to report back following that deadline, but we would need to move right away in order to meet that timeline.
Thank you. And Councillor Thoms.
Yeah, not really a comment. I'd just like to second the mayor's motion.
Okay, and Mayor, would you mind repeating that one more time, the motion that you made?
Yes, I'm actually just considering, and I'm not sure if the clerk has got the wording on it. And then also back to the clerk in response to Councillor Todd's request and the CAO's response, if we can actually put a date on that to be a little bit more precise with the motion, and hearing what the CAO was saying, a date of October 15th or something that's close to that date in terms of a weekday on the calendar. So does the clerk have the exact wording that you would like to either post or read back to us?
Yes, one moment, Madam Mayor. Just based on the comments received and based on the comments received and the timelines identified by the CAO, I would recommend, based on that the motion should read that the delegation from Greg Burns from the Garden Hill Neighborhood Group be referred to the Director of Development Services and the CAO for further review, consideration, and discussion by October 19th, 2025, which is the end of that midweek.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you for that. So we have, the mayor has moved that, and Councillor Thoms, you offered to second it. So now hearing it again, that holds. Okay, any further, just want to make sure, any further discussion? Okay, so I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So before I pass it back, I would like to thank yourself, Greg, for coming forward. And I can see you have a number of participants joining the call today. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. And I'll pass it back to the mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for chairing that segment. So now we are moving on to the public comment period. And as per our procedural bylaw, the purpose of the public comment period is for members of the public to write comments that are on today's council's agenda. If you have a question related to an item that's not on today's agenda, please wait until question period, which is later in the meeting. I request that you keep your comments brief and respectful. I also remind council members that no questions or comments can be directed to those providing public comments tonight. So we're here to listen. As we are conducting this meeting virtually, we will have a slightly different approach to public comment period. Instructions on how to raise your hand virtually are noted on the agenda. Please click the raise hand button if you do wish to provide a comment to council. And if you are on the phone by chance, you can press *9 to raise your hand so that we can call you on your comments to provide your comments. Please remember that you've got 2 minutes to make your comments. And as always in these online situations, we have our clerk to assist us in managing the public comment period. So thank you in advance to the clerk.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We do have someone who has raised their hand, Mr. Glenn Deeve. Mr. Deeve, you are able to speak. So if you could just please unmute yourself and provide your comment.
Hi, thank you. As you know, I'm a member of the Garden Hill Community Group, and I appreciate what was discussed tonight, but still somewhat frustrated with the process. Allowing us to meet and discuss with staff in mid-October does absolutely nothing to assist with ensuring that the community's concerns are addressed in the draft conditions, which must be done by the end of September. Our group has put forth a tremendous effort to try to ensure that the community's voice is heard and that the things that we are concerned about are addressed. And once again, this leaves us out of the picture, and our voices are not going to be heard on the critical matters that have to be put forward on September 30th. I think that's an injustice for the amount of work we've done, the expertise we've provided at no cost, and I think that that's just unacceptable.
I see that the CAO has come on, and while council is not commenting, I think the CAO, if I see your hand up, you want to say something here.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. For clarification, we are meeting with the group before September 30th. The attempt to meet with the group before September 30th to meet the September 30th deadline. Mr. Deeth, just for clarification, the October 19th deadline was to report back to council. So yes, we are trying to hear your voices before the deadline for submission to OLT.
Okay, appreciate that.
Just checking in, are there any other hands up that I'm just not seeing on my screen at the moment?
No, no, Madam Mayor, there are no other hands up.
Thank you, and thank you for the comment from Mr. Deeth. Moving on then to item number 7, we don't have any correspondence this evening. Moving on to item number 8, consent agenda, adoption of minutes. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered collectively as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. The consent items are listed on the agenda. Would any council member like to pull any of the items for separate discussion? Looking around, seeing none, would any member, if nobody is removing, then I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes as listed. So can I get a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Adam, all in favor. Thank you. That is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 9, consent agenda advisory committee and board meetings. Would anybody like to remove any items under this consent agenda for separate discussion? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to receive this item for information? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Deputy Mayor, all in favor. And that is passed unanimously. Stay with me on these votes. Moving on to item number 10, items for consideration. 10.1 report ES 1025 drinking water quality management system commitment re-endorsement. So this is part of a few items that were deferred from the September 2nd CAL meeting. So does staff have anything further on this item before we consider it?
I can be very brief in saying that this is a part of the periodic re-endorsement of our QMS commitment from council. It composes part of our quality management system, which is in turn required as part of the ministry's drinking water works licensing framework. With the addition of myself as the Director of Environmental Services and the CAO, as well as the re-endorsement of the municipality's commitment, we ask that council re-endorse this as a matter of course.
Thank you to the director for that additional information. Any questions, any comments for the director before we take a vote on this? Okay, seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 10.2, Report ES 1125, redesignation of overall responsible operator and assigning of acting ORO policy update. Does staff have anything further they would like to add to this?
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, as our QP Local 749 collective agreement resulted in an increase for compensation for acting overall responsible operator for our water system. This A will formalize part of the QMS documentation, and B will increase our management staff who periodically act as the overall responsible operator and bring their compensation in line with that of our unionized staff.
Thank you for that clarification and those highlights. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion listed on the agenda? Councillor Adam is moving, Councillor Darrell seconding. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 10.3, Report PS 1125, Community Wildlife Fire Protection Plan, Hydro One Energizing Life Community Fund Grant. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before we consider this item? Director Williams?
Yes, Mayor and Council. Just to let you know some good news from Port Hope Fire Emergency Services. In the spring of this year, we made application to Hydro One for the 2025 Energizing Life Community Investment Grant, which was to support the development of our community wildfire protection plan for the municipality of Port Hope. In August, we just announced through Hydro One that we were the successful applicant through the grant process, and we'll be receiving full funding for the development of our community wildfire protection plan in the sum of $25,000. As we know, wildland fires continue to pose an increasing threat across Ontario. An interesting stat was, as of August of 2025, 16.3 million acres of forest has been destroyed in Canada through wildland fires. So we know that there's a risk, and that climate conditions and extended periods of dry and hot weather affect that. The municipality of Port Hope is not immune to those risks. While historically lower in wildfire activity compared to northern regions, our growing interface zones, forested areas and rural communities place us at elevated risk. So to better prepare our community, Port Hope Fire and Emergency Services will be developing a community wildfire protection plan over the course of the remainder of this year into the spring of 2026, where we'll be performing urban wildland fire interface training with Ganaraska Forest. So in summary, the plan is going to play a very vital role in enhancing the safety of our residents, protecting property, and preparing our community for the evolving changes associated with wildfire risks. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Williams, and a big congratulations on this. And I know that this is an issue that our Deputy Mayor has spoken on numerous times at this council table. And as you know, we had lots of back and forth emailing over the summer when I was advocating for doing more than a fire ban in relation to the Ganaraska Forest because of the concerns of the drought conditions. And I know that some of the supports that used to exist within the forest no longer exist. And so I think this is definitely movement in the right direction. And I do see that the Deputy Mayor would like to share some comments and questions with you, as well as Councillor Clare. So I'll turn it over first to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Williams, for your report and for going after this opportunity for the municipality and really the greater our neighboring communities as well. It's important that we do this work within, but of course, wildfires know no boundaries, right? So I think it extends those boundaries as well, the importance of this initiative. So I hear more and more feedback, questions, concerns on a fairly regular basis about the potential for fire in our community, which is good in a way that it is something on people's minds, and there is that diligence that people want to know more and what they can do. Could you just share at this point some ways that we may bring this forward to the community to bring that awareness that this is something that we're working on, and if there's any opportunity for participation or education, how will that come about?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So the plan is going to be quite comprehensive. It's going to basically be comprised of 4 pillars, starting with prevention, mitigation, including public education, and also operational planning. When it comes to public education components, we are going to be hosting in-person sessions to provide not only information from the plan, but information to the residents about prevention and mitigation of forest fires in and around their homes. We are also going to be working with Hydro One to further promote the accessible grant application to Port Hope, and hopefully that's going to encourage residents to maybe look into it a little bit further. We're going to be having all the information on the Port Hope Fire and Emergency Services website, working with our communications team as well to advise the fact that Port Hope was successful in this grant opportunity. We are going to be developing this plan, which is going to include working with our residents and informing them of what the plan has to offer.
Thank you, Director Williams, for that information. Councillor Clare, did you have a question, or was it answered? It was answered?
Yeah.
Okay. So finally, I'm sure it was about the community engagement piece, I'm assuming. Councillor Adam.
Thank you. And congratulations first, Director Williams, Chief. I have a quick question about the forest fire wildfires. In Port Hope, how many did we have any in Port Hope this year? And if so, how many? And then on a side note, I know we have the mutual aid and the automatic aid. Did we respond to any like in our neighboring Hamilton Township this year?
Yeah, so great question. When it comes to wildland fires, and actually it's funny you're asking that question. We had to start pulling some of those stats for the development of this plan actually today. So we're still comprising those stats, but what I can tell you is absolutely we responded to wildland fires. And when people think wildland fires, they think on television, large hundreds, thousands of acres. We deal with wildland fires from agricultural crop fires to brush fires, to hedgerow fires, to fires actually within the forest. So we have responded to all of those fires this year. That's why I was pushing so hard to get the ban imposed due to the environmental conditions within Port Hope, and it was very successful that we did that. And when it comes to our automatic and mutual aid, I just established mutual aid agreements with Cavan and Clarington, something we didn't have, so we can have those resources if we're ever dealing with a fire in the Gananaska Forest. And we have been called to Hamilton Township on multiple occasions this year to assist them with grass fires. So it is a real risk with the environmental conditions in the Gananaska Forest, with the derecho and the ice storm, the amount of timber that's standing dead or that's fallen, and the lack of resources to clean that up. There's a large fuel load in that forest, not only in the forest, but in and around Port Hope because of our rural community. This is a risk that's real, and I think this plan is definitely going to set us on the right track to work on prevention mitigation resources that we can put in place, as well as educating our public and working on operational planning and how to deal with it, not if it happens, when it's going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And maybe I'm just going to do a quick follow-up back to what happened this summer with the ban that was put in place, and then some of the further discussion and deliberation around whether or not that ban went far enough, looking at some of, say, the responses that happened in New Brunswick. I'm wondering, is the plan going to contemplate all of the policy instruments that are available, even the ones that might require further discussion and deliberation and potentially are contentious in terms of how to respond to extreme drought conditions in terms of limiting all access into the forest? Oh, I think Director Williams might have turned off the video instead of turning on the mic. Did we lose you, Director Williams?
Sorry about that. I think my internet connection must have been cut out there. So yeah, so in relation to the broader conversation regarding the fire ban, it is a decision that's not taken lightly. We generally do it in conjunction with the Northumberland County Fire Chiefs Association. It's more effective to impose a ban countywide than we find municipality by municipality. As you said, fire knows no bounds. So that's the way we like to approach it. And working with the GRCA, it was a recommendation from myself that we did close access to the Ganaraska Forest due to the environmental conditions. The decision was made by the forest not to close access at the time. I think this plan is going to highlight potential need to actually look at that a little bit deeper, especially with the associated risks that are present. And hopefully this is going to not educate not only our residents, but also internal, external stakeholders such as GRCA about the potential risks and hazards when we leave access available to those in those type of conditions. So.
Thank you, Director Williams. And I think this council would really like to hear more updates on the plan as it unfolds, because it's an issue of, I think, great concern to
Thank
us
you.
and obviously to the community. And I think the messaging of it's not a matter of if, but really when, and what are all the tools that are available to mitigate the implications and the damage to our community. So moving on to the recommended motion, which is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Darrell. All in favor? Thank you, and that's passed unanimously. Moving on to 10.4, report PS 1225 re-civic address bylaw. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before we consider this item?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Through you to council. It's a new month, so it means a new bylaw. This one was pushed forward by our district station chief for District 3. They had run into several issues. In fact, they had 15 calls this year in which they were not able to locate the residency that they're trying to that they were trying to get to. It was delayed. Now, of course, I didn't get the sums of what the results were, if they were fatal because of that, but I think we can all agree that one delay is one too many. So I put forth this bylaw for two purposes. The first purpose was, of course, for the 911 signs to be out in our rural areas. So EMS, Port Hope Police, and of course our fire could locate homes quite easily, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning when we're dealing with a snowstorm. And then, of course, to kind of standardize how we assign addresses within the municipality. I know we have some half houses here, I guess 9.5 Little Hope Street and stuff like that. We're hoping to put an end to the halves by designing and following a system here. I've been working with planning on developing the process moving forward and how it will be adapted. And we'll be working with Canada Post and trying to find out how they assign addresses from a mailing standpoint, so we can put something together comprehensively. That's what this bylaw is for, and I'd be happy to answer any questions council has.
Thank you so much, Dave. And having experienced a 911 call into a rural residence, not in Port Hope, but in Northumberland County, and seeing that ambulance flail and not find an address, I can personally attest to how stressful that is in an emergency situation. So really appreciate you bringing this forward. Deputy Mayor, you had your hand up, and Councillor Les right after.
Thank you. So yes, thank you for the report. So I do have a few questions. We've had some discussion offline, so I just want to ask these once again. So first of all, I absolutely support that the idea behind all residents and even properties that don't have residents, the farm properties have at least the option for the fields to have a sign but that all residents and workplaces do have a sign that's visible and adheres to what's needed to be visible. I just have a few questions though about some of the language in the bylaw itself, and just from the point of view of equity and accessibility to all peoples about being able to put the sign up and have it up. So when I read it, it says that every owner shall affix or cause to be affixed. So does that mean that the owners themselves are responsible for putting up the sign, or will that be done by, is there, I know a lot of municipalities, it's the fire department or the public works that actually install the sign to make sure it's done properly. So I don't see that here. I just see that it's up to the owner to do that. So could you clarify that?
Yeah, so in this municipality currently, it's under the building department that oversees the signage, but they've had issue with putting it up there due to traffic safety concerns. They're not trained to be doing it. I'm not really sure. This is the first time I've heard of a building department being tasked with putting up these signs. We're going to have to develop a policy for how we want that to be run out, because there are certain standards that have to be met as far as distance from the middle of the road and such, that I'll be working with building to put forth a plan as to who will be responsible for that, and working with the other departments if we're going to be the ones to install the signs. Of course, we're limited staff-wise. That is the other implication that we could run into. So what most likely will be happening is they will be tasked with finding a contractor to come in and just place the pole, and then we will come in and fix the sign. They can purchase through us. So it's just finding we'll give them the layout of where the sign needs to go, but they'll have to be responsible for placing the sign, because currently they would have to come in and pay the building department anyways. So they would just pay a contractor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that's one of my concerns, is that I know of many people, including myself, who also would be put at risk if I'm measuring from the middle of the road. And I also do not have the means whatsoever of measuring, installing, and that type of thing. And my concern is that if we leave it to residents to do, we're trying to achieve consistency. And I don't want to be in a position where residents try their best or pay somebody money to do it, and I don't even know who they would pay. There's not really any companies who do this that I'm aware of. Then only to go through this cycle of getting it wrong and wrong and wrong. And I think that some of our most vulnerable people in our community who really need these signs don't have the means whatsoever of putting them up. So that's one of my concerns. Two more questions, if I may. It also says that the municipality may order the 911 signs. And when I looked at other municipalities, it clearly said that after a certain period, the municipality will order the 911 sign, and it will be charged to the property owner. So after 30 days of non-compliance, it is done for them. There's no choice, which I think is a stronger policy. That way, rather than going straight to fining the person, we're actually doing it. It's done, and we're charging them instead.
So for that wording right there, the may, it allows us the ability to do it, which would be what would happen. So we wouldn't be moving into a fine. We would be moving into a resolution and a remediation. By putting wording in like will, we are bound to do that. By putting in wording may, we're able to work with the resident back and forth to achieve compliance, maybe on the cheaper side for them, because if we come in and do it, it's 25% on top of that. You know, there may be an order fee and stuff like that. So there's problems and complications that run into words like will. I prefer to be open and educational first, and give ourselves a little bit of leeway if we need it.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my last comment is I support this. I'm just not comfortable with leaving it to the expectation that citizens are to put it up themselves.
We would be out there. For sure.
I think potentially having it in our fee structure, as you know, all our municipal fees, if we actually had a line item in there that said the fee for installation, I'm not sure if that's in there, but that's something that we need to include. So
So
that residents
the,
have that option.
as we said, the issue with that is finding which division or department would be responsible for that act. I would have to talk to the road works department and stuff like that through the manager Dave there and see if they have staffing available to do something like that. I don't want to commit to another division or department staff when it's not. I don't oversee it. So if not, we do have remediation ways and ways we can use contractors through just the municipal law enforcement fee schedule that we can utilize. But as I said, currently it is under building, and we can take that recommendation on a staffing level and keeping it hopefully somewhat similar to the 150 that it currently is.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Moving on, I'm sorry, I think it was Councillor Lasson, Councillor Todd, or was it the other way?
Vicky has asked a lot of my questions, and Dave, thank you for your answers. I guess the one question I have, how do you know who is and who isn't in compliance? Have you got a list of people that need their signs changed?
So basically, just like most of our bylaws, this is kind of one of those things that is reactive instead of proactive. We definitely do not have the staff in our division to be driving around and trying to find addresses and stuff like that. So the hope is that we'll have some help from other divisions as they see them or run into issues. We're going to try and get the logs from the 15 calls that were missed out and try and work with those residencies or residents to get them in compliance. But it's kind of one of those things, as they come up, we'll deal with them.
And how will you know when they come up?
When we're informed. So when we get a report or a complaint. So usually we'll get a report or something like that from anybody in Station 3 that's out on the road that's gone out, or hopefully, EMS runs into trouble and they'll direct us with this bylaw. And we're also going with a strong campaign similar to what Peterborough County has done, Love Your Sign. So the hope is that we can generate a conversation and that we'll start getting some phone calls from residents that don't have signs and asking us how they can bring themselves into compliance, in which we'll go out and start the education process.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
And I did note that Director Davidson did have her hand up. I don't know if you still wanted to add something to this discussion, Director Davidson?
I did. Thank you. If I may, I'd rather hear the other council questions before commenting, if that's possible.
Absolutely. So over to you, Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much. Dave, council's recently heard that there are some private lanes in the municipality, rural areas, where homes are on those private lanes, and the owners of those private lanes, I guess, have some jurisdiction over whether or not they are, there are signs on the sides of those roads. Curious as to whether or not, because I couldn't find it in the bylaw, we're addressing that and making sure that that is a situation that doesn't exist, and that signs take precedence, even though it might be on a private lane.
So for situations like that, I would think that we would use a 2-sign system. So basically for any laneway, you would have the 3 or 4 numbers on there, so that as you're driving up, that the laneway has, as many houses as it does. And then the hope is that the homeowner would take the cost and not try and saddle it with the lane owner, because they want their property identified on the laneway, and that another sign identifies on their property for their specific address. So
I'm not thinking of that situation, Dave, about cost sharing. I'm thinking about the situation where a private lane owner prevents the sign to go up in the first place.
So basically where that would come into effect is all houses on the laneway have to have addresses under this bylaw. It's a property. So they're regulated to have those signs. They can't argue about it. We'll come in, we'll put those signs ourselves. whether they want to or not, because it's a property that they own that needs signage for that house.
Except they'd be putting the signage on someone else's property.
They'd be putting the signage on, well, I mean, I'd have to look at property lines and stuff like that. But I don't think I'm going to have an issue with anybody as far as this issue. And if I do run into something like that, then you'll see a report coming across council to amend this quite quickly.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And back to you, Deputy Mayor, for final comment or question.
Thank you. Yes, so Todd just kind of triggered a thought, and I'm not sure, Dave, if you can answer this question, or maybe even Director Williams, but he just made me think of the topic of ARUs. And is this something that, is this signage changing at all, or is there assumption that they have to look at a call at both potential residents on that property to find out where that call is coming from?
So speaking to the address side, we are trying to, this is where the Canada Post conversations come in, as we are trying to best set a procedure for ARUs. Now, this will also I will be looking to bring forth a second suites or ARU licensing bylaw for the purposes of fire, so that they can identify that a house does have multiple units in it under the licensing side, so that they know when they go in how many units, and we're looking at how best to have them addressed in the house and locations and stuff like that. So fire will hopefully have their plans all laid out when they go into a situation like that where there's multiple units in a home.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you everyone for this fulsome discussion. The recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Oh, Director Davidson, I'm so sorry. Did you want to weigh in?
Yes, please. Well, I certainly appreciate all the work that has gone into this bylaw, and there is a lot of great content in this bylaw. I also share some of the comments about public safety with respect to residents installing their own signage in the road allowance in the rural area. And I would suggest that we potentially pivot to works and engineering staff taking responsibility for that function. We do have the ability to do so.
That would be awesome.
Thank you for that. So does that affect any of the wording, Dave, in the current bylaw from your perspective?
No, I basically I was quite happy to hear that comment. That's amazing. That if we're going to be moving forward to that, I will work with Director Davidson on the fees she would like to see in there included, so that residents have somebody to contact.
Okay. Terrific, thank you. So then back to the agenda, the recommended motion is on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on into item number 11, committee reports and recommendations, starting with 11.1, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of September 2nd, 2025, regarding correspondence from Chief Simpson, Alderville First Nation, where we request for a letter of support from the municipality of Port Hope regarding rights of personhood for Rice Lake. Is there anything further that anybody would like to add before we vote on this matter? Seeing none, I'll just add a couple of things, which is I did have a chance to speak to Chief Simpson, and he did say that whilst they are wanting to start with Rice Lake, that they fully still intend to explore the Ganaraska River. And when I had mentioned the September 30th event that we're having for Truth and Reconciliation, that Tom Jackson has put up a $5,000 donation for this cause in hopes of getting matching funding from the community. And Chief Simpson and Tom Jackson have been in discussion on this, and Chief Simpson is very excited about that collaboration and that support. So I just wanted to add that to this. But if there's nothing further, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion on the agenda? Councillor Todd is the mover, Councillor Clare is the seconder. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 11.2, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of September 2nd, 2025 regarding presentation by Bob Wallace, Chairperson, Aaron Oxland, Vice Chairperson, and Margaret Scott, CEO, Port Hope Public Library Board, re 2026 Port Hope Public Library budget. Is there anything further anybody would like to add before we vote on the matter? And the recommended motion, of course, is on the agenda. Anything further from anyone? Okay, seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed. Moving on to 11.3, motion for Committee of the Whole meeting of September 2nd, 2025 regarding staff presentation or report FS 0625 proposed levels of service asset management plan. Is there anything further anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Seeing none, the recommended motion is on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Adam. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 11.4, report FS 0725 2025 second quarter Q2 financial report. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on this matter? Seeing none from my colleagues, I just want to again say that this was a good start in getting more regular reporting on our finances, and I hope that at least personally from my chair, that we get a little bit more detail in further quarterly reports moving forward. Having said that, can I get a mover and seconder for the recommended motion on the agenda? Moved by Councillor Darrell, second by Councillor Clare. All in favor? That is passed unanimously. Moving on to 11.5, report FS 0825 2026 post-retirement and amortization. Is there anything further anyone would like to add before we vote on this matter? Councillor Less. Oh, you have to unmute yourself, Councillor Less.
There'd be a lot of people that would rather I muted, but I didn't see you live at the Cal meeting, but I did review the YouTube version the next day, and the topic, if you take anything and in isolation, it makes a lot of sense. But when you take this proposal in light of the fact we're almost into budgeting, and there's going to be a whole list of things we're going to have to choose from, I don't see the purpose in moving this ahead at this stage, and I would like to make a counter proposal.
Councillor Less, are you talking about the post-retirement and amortization report, or are you?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about WE 8.
Okay. I know it's been a long meeting. So just making sure we're talking about 11.5 post-retirement and amortization. Does anyone have anything further that they want to add to this? Okay, so can I get a mover and seconder for the motion listed on the agenda? Moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Todd. All in favor? Okay, that is passed. And then moving on to 11.6, report WE 0825 Rural Roads Office Edition 2026 pre-budget approval. So I think this is what you wanted to speak to, Councillor Less.
Yes,
so
my apologies.
I'll turn it back to you to continue your thoughts or your comments.
So, it's a worthwhile project. We've got tons of worthwhile projects, but we can't afford them all. And we're going to have to make some hard decisions come October and November. And this is going to be one of the ones we're going to have to decide upon. So I see no point in bringing it forward and doing a pre-budget approval when we're so close to the budget. And I would like to see staff have delve deeper a little bit into this to see if we have any other options besides this one.
Thank you, Councillor Les. Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments on this? Councillor Clare?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this isn't a new project. This is an additional budget approval to allow a project we already decided was a priority and wanted to fund moves forward. We approved this in the 2025 budget, and on the basis that SLT had reviewed it against all of those other competing priorities and determined it should move forward. But also, this isn't the first time. It was first approved that something needed to be done about the conditions of the rural works yard, the working conditions environment in 2022. And there was first budget approval to do something at the Canton Hub, is my understanding. When that wasn't deemed feasible, there was an additional budget approval to look at doing something more permanent. There were quotes obtained for portable and things. I'll let Director Davidson speak to details if people need those. But this has been something that has been looked at year after year after year for many years now and has consistently come forward as a priority. I also understand that we have had 2 vacancies in our rural roads crew for this entire summer season. We've had to post that job hosting a second time because we didn't get any qualified applicants. And that has led to I think, interruption of some of the service of that crew in our rural community. And I wonder whether the working conditions may contribute to our inability to retain staff and to attract new staff. And I think this is a really important function. So from my perspective, this is not about whether this stacks up against any new priorities that are coming forward. This is just fulfilling something that we have been saying we think is a priority for at least 3 or 4 years at the budget table. And it's unfortunate that things like tariffs that we have no control over are driving up the cost of construction. But I don't think that that means that we should then postpone again moving forward with a project and addressing what we've already acknowledged is inadequate facilities for our rural roads crew.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Hang on a sec, Councillor Les. I want to give it over to Councillor Todd, and then I'll swing back to you because he had his hand up, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Todd.
Thanks very much, and I appreciate the importance of this project, and also I hear what Councillor Clare is saying in so far as it's been approved, and that's fine. But I don't think what we are talking about today is whether we rescind the approval of the project. I think what we're saying is the project can go ahead with the original amount if they can find more creative ways of doing it, or we would put the additional 275,000 ask into the budget process and then decide as we look across all facilities whether or not we want to spend an additional $275,000 on this project, or whether the base amount stands and we just need to find different alternatives for the project as it goes forward. So I don't think my understanding is not that we're in the position of, are we canceling this project, but rather the request is, given the state of all of our facilities, this $275,000 should be looked at during the budget as whether or not we want to put the additional money to it, or whether or not we want to keep the base amount and see whether or not there's some alternatives.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And going back to you, Councillor Les, before I circle to Councillor Adam and the Deputy Mayor.
I find what Councillor Todd has expressed is very acceptable. Stick to the original amount. That's what it was approved. If they can build it for that, and we want to hold to our word on approving it, fine. But I would find Councillor Attridge's proposal very acceptable, that the overage be discussed at budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Less. And Councillor Adam, did you still have your hand up on this discussion? I did note it, but see that it's gone down.
I do, but I figured I'd let Deputy Mayor go first, and then I'll go after.
Okay, all right, Deputy Mayor, and then we'll go to Councillor Adam.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Councillor Adam. So I have heard all the comments, and I am very torn because I do agree with what Councillor Les and Councillor Todd has said. But when I'm looking at this amount, 560,000, that's the total amount awarded. That for a 1,200 square foot building nowadays, I'm not so sure, in a municipal building, I'm not so sure you could get anything under that amount. I think that is a very competitive price. And I think the longer, 270 or whatever the original was, I'm not sure what you can build with that. Anything reasonable, a municipal facility. I think the longer we wait, we're just adding to the price. And I don't know the term that Councillor Davison used last time, but there is a term for turning this down. And then if I don't know if it's fishing or whatever the term is, looking for another bidder, I think there could be complications with that. And I think that there is a timeline and we need to be decisive about it. And I really don't think we can get a 1,200 square foot municipal building for less than this amount.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Now turning it over to Councillor Adam.
Thank you. I appreciate. So I figured we have the director on the line here. Maybe if the director, Jeanette, could maybe speak to this a little bit before we make the decision.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd be happy to. Thank you. So in 2022, Council approved an initial budget of $175,000 to renovate the basement of the hub to provide office space for our rural road staff. While this was not the ideal solution, it was a workable option at the time. In 2023, an additional $45,000 was approved to address rising construction costs. As costs continued to increase, we explored alternative options, including the purchase of an office trailer. 36 by 60 foot trailer with a washroom and kitchenette was quoted at $710,000. Given the extremely high cost for a temporary solution, we shifted our focus to a permanent building addition, with Council approving an additional $80,000 in 2024. More recently, I obtained an updated estimate for a smaller 36 by 24 trailer without a washroom or kitchenette. The cost came in at $270,000. It's important to note, however, that the average lifespan of an office trailer is only 5 to 15 years, making it a short-term and less cost-effective solution. By comparison, the Altus Canadian Cost Guide lists the average construction cost per square foot in the GTA at $460 to $760 for a civics garage or transportation building, with facility maintenance buildings even higher. The proposed office addition is estimated at $437 per square foot, which is well below the industry average and represents excellent value. Dedicated working areas not only support staff needs for washrooms and meals, it allows staff to perform administrative tasks, planning, and coordination on site without needing to travel to separate locations. This reduces downtime and improves response times for field operations, especially during peak seasons or emergency situations. Workplace regulations increasingly emphasize the importance of proper rest areas, hygiene facilities, and safe working environments. The addition will help ensure compliance with occupational health and safety standards, reducing liability and promoting a culture of safety. This project is not only the most cost-effective choice, but also the most responsible long-term investment for the municipality. It will provide a safe, functional, and permanent space for our rural road staff who play an essential role in maintaining its critical infrastructure that residents rely on every day. For these reasons, staff are seeking pre-budget approval in the amount of $275,000 to move this project forward to completion. We are confident this represents the best path forward and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you to the director for that. And I see Councillor Adams' hand went up again. Is that an again follow-up to this?
It is, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions then. The option of the portable, $700,000, is that what you said?
That was the original that included a washroom and kitchenette facility.
seems very, very high in my personal opinion. Did you, but on a side note to that, did you look at anything else? Like, let's say George Hamilton, which we still do have. Did you look at that as a possibility as well?
We did look at other options that just increases costs with downtime, with traveling back and forth to the facility. It's certainly not ideal.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Less. Oh, can you unmute yourself, Councillor Less?
Sorry. To Jeanette, when you talked about the trailer, you said it was 36 by 60?
That was the original one, yes.
Okay, so that's 2,100 square foot, which is, a third again the size of what we're talking about. So we're not comparing apples and apples here, first of all. And even with that, you're talking $300 a square foot as opposed to $400 a square foot for the renovation. I just can't see, if you can get something done for the original amount, do it. Otherwise, put it into the budget cycle and let's see how it shakes out with everything else that's going to come at us.
Thank you, Councillor Less. I also see Councillor Darrell's hand up. Councillor Darrell, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on, I think from a cost perspective, having just gone through recently enough to be comparable, a build of similar size personally, it's coming in very, very cost effective, I would say. And I think, I don't think I'd be in a position to support a trailer at any cost, because it's a temporary and it's a bad investment. Lifespans aren't, as Jeanette stated, it's just not there to be a good investment. I think this comes down to investing in our employees and giving them a nice place to work. I know it costs a bit of money, but you have to invest in Port Hope, and it's in Ward 2 investment, which this just goes along with everything that Ward 2 says about stuff being left and not getting done. That aside, from the equation, I think you're not going to get probably a better quote by not going forward in this. I think you could probably add 25 or 40% to it if you retender. That's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Darrell, and I'm going back to Councillor Todd in the order that the hands went up.
Thanks very much. I appreciate what Councillor Darrell has said, and I don't disagree. I think the work environment of the staff is very, very important, and for me, I don't feel that's necessarily what we're talking about right now. I think when we look at the money, I would rather look at the money across all of the facilities at once, because there may be other departments who also don't have great work environments that will not get money if we do a pre-budget. For me, this is more category budgeting, so I would rather look at facilities across the entire spectrum and make those choices. And that's not to say that, in this particular case, I very much would like these people to have the best facilities. I'm also conscious of the fact that we have other employees who have other facilities who may also come forward, and we haven't had the opportunity to hear from them. I would rather hear from everyone and make that choice holistically than piecemeal with whoever comes forward first gets it. So.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And I'm going to jump in since I haven't had a chance to say things before I circle back to others. I've been listening to this conversation, and I do think it's really important not to conflate two different issues. One is that we value staff. We want them to have the best environment in which to work, to be comfortable, and to be able to do their jobs effectively. It's also true that we have approved this need and this project in the past. So those things are true, they remain true. What I'm struggling with is a concern with our overall budget and our spending moving forward, both at the county level and at the municipal level. And for me, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not saying we have to necessarily do a new build, or there's no other acceptable alternative that we could be considering that would still provide all of the things that would make for a comfortable work environment for our workers. And for me, it's really important to see the most recent and the most current other options. And maybe it's not, just as an example, a brand new portable. Maybe there are portables that can be repurposed in a more temporary way as we move forward with what Councillor Attridge was proposing, which is an overall review of our facilities. And so we meet the obligations to our staff, but we do it within the confines of what we have to spend as a municipality. Is it necessarily the best or the ideal? Maybe not. Can we provide something that is very decent and does check the boxes? I'm not yet convinced that we have seen the most current options that could be alternatives to what is, set out to us. And I appreciate that Director Davidson has talked about costing previously, but again, I am working from the perspective of anything that goes above and beyond what we have approved, and until we have a fulsome budget discussion of everything, I cannot, in good conscience and as having full fiduciary duty to this municipality, be approving anything without it being part of our larger budget deliberations. We've heard time and time again, especially back to Deputy Mayor's point from our rural constituents about rising taxes, and that is my beacon for decision making on this one here. Moving, I'm not sure what order it was. I think it was maybe the clerk can remind me. Sorry, I've just lost track of whose hand was up first.
Madam Mayor, it is my understanding that it was Deputy Mayor first, followed by Councillor Attridge, followed by Councillor Holloway-Wadhwani. Nope, I'm sorry.
Nope.
Okay, so it was Councillor, I believe it was Deputy Mayor Mink, and then Councillor Holloway-Wadhwani, and then.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So, and this will be the last thing I think that I will speak to this. So I do think the two topics go hand in hand. I think investing in staff also carry over into other areas of operations. I think it carries over into the safety of our citizens. I think, as we've seen, that to Councillor Claire's point, we lost some operators this summer. It impacted our roadside cuts, which is definitely sightline safety issues. It has definitely been different out here this year than it has in other years without that extra staff. And I think that on cold winter nights, after they've been out plowing all day, going to a portable is entirely unacceptable. On the heat waves, going into a portable is also unacceptable. I think that we need to invest in our staff. It pays off in other ways. It pays off in not going to a union, which of course we want to avoid, keeping in mind that rural roads are not unionized at this point. So to Todd's point, we have not updated the rural works yard. We have updated other facilities in the urban area. We've had the JOs, the Joint Operations Center, as well as 5 Mill Street, as well as upgrades to Town Hall, all in recent years. So I think it is overdue. I think that if we delay this, we are going to come back with a higher cost later and regret that. And I think the term here that I found is bid shopping. And I think that we have a risk of paying the price of bid shopping if we don't do this now. And we also have the relationship with Delrin Limited to back out on a contract at this point when they've given us a very competitive price, that we also run the risk of a future relationship with this particular builder. So I think I understand the argument that we need to take it into budget, but I don't see any benefit in doing that at this point.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Moving on then to Councillor Clare.
Thank you, Marilena. And I just wanted to say to Councillor Todd, I agree with you that that looking at this issue of the staff working conditions in our facilities is something that should be done in a holistic way. And I fully support any way that we can be doing that moving forward. I do, though, want to point out that we do have some pieces in place that help us do that. One is the reliance on the senior leadership team, who look at all of the potential capital projects each budget season and determine which are priorities. And they have consistently year over year for the time we've been on council come back and said, this project is a priority, and it makes the cut every year. I can't see why that wouldn't continue again this coming budget season. The other piece we have at our disposal is the asset management plans that we spent a long time looking at our last meeting. And I believe this building is one of the lowest ranked facilities in our municipality as far as its current conditions as per the asset management plan, if not, if my memory serves, the worst condition building. So I think we do have pieces and evidence that in front of us that support this continuing to be prioritized. And I don't see why we would wait and just have that affirmed a month or two from now at the risk of that, whatever the bid shopping, given that we already have the tender. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Moving on to Councillor Todd.
Thanks very much. No, I appreciate those comments, Councillor Clare. I guess what I would tack on to my last comments is, should this go into budget, it certainly doesn't stop council from voting for the money at that point. What it does do is gives us, that fiduciary responsibility to the constituents of looking at all the projects that are going to be on the table and then being able to weigh them out. And if at the end of the day we look at it and go, yes, this is the project we should be putting it towards 100%. But we may also find that maybe we don't need all 275, maybe there's more time, but I think it's important. I just want to tack on to my previous comments that putting it to budget doesn't mean they're not going to get the money. It means we're going to be looking at it more responsibly.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. And I just sort of following up on that, I do want to fully support that comment. It's about not making a decision now. It's about making the most responsible and accountable and transparent decision as part of the budget process. And it's not to say that it won't be that what the council supports, but rather that it's made as part of a broader conversation. I do have a question for Director Davidson. Well, actually, I've got a couple of things I want to share. One is maybe during budget conversations, we could contemplate using some of the rural LLRW reserve for this cost. Just something to consider in terms of moving it into that discussion, but also in terms of bid shopping. If there was a decision or contemplation about having a smaller expansion, I'm assuming that wouldn't put us in any kind of compromised position either, just as a point of clarification for my own information and interest.
Happy to respond. That would be correct. If you change the design, you're not issuing a bid for the same thing, which means it is a change and it wouldn't be the same bid. So yes, it could, as long as a significant enough change is made to the tender.
Okay, thank you for that. And turning it over to Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So first off, you just answered one of my questions, and it was a bit about the bid shopping, because I know that is a real thing, and I don't want us getting sued over something like that, of course. But the next question that I have for you is, and I'm assuming because we have what do I see here, 3 directors and our CAO on here with us. You guys have been talking about budget at the senior leadership table. I am assuming that you have spoken about this particular item, and if you could just let us know that you have spoken about this item and if it is crossing the line currently as per the senior leadership, and that would help me out a lot if I know what you guys are thinking.
I can respond to that, Chair, if you want. Director Baxter is away at a conference this week, so I'm more than happy to weigh in. All these items are on the table, and I call it, we put everything on the table. We have an extensive prioritization list of what we are going to present to council, trying to understand, what we feel we can do from building our capital reserves on the capital levy piece of it and managing that and coming up with a dollar figure that we need to work with. So this is part of the, depending on how tonight goes, this would be on the budget list. I call it snapping the chalk line. Like at what point where are we going to drop projects off? And that is part of, I guess, the conversation that I'm hearing tonight is, a part of that fulsome conversation to see where we draw the line, what we can make affordable. So yes, we've had these conversations amongst a multitude of other capital projects that have been put forward. Yes, so I would say yes, it hasn't gone undiscussed.
And then a quick follow-up, if you don't mind. It has been discussed, so does that mean that it is kind of crossed the line with the senior leadership, and that is why it's being brought to us as a pre-budget approval? Or if you could help me out with that insight there.
It is on the top. It is in the top of the ranking list for the SLT, but there are other very closely competing projects for this one as well.
Thank you. My mute and unmute seems to be sticking. So thank you for the discussion. It seems like we've gone around the table with lots of comments. So I think now it's time to vote on the recommended motion on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion or comments on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is passed 4-3. Moving on to item number 12, notice of motions. There are none. Moving on to item 13, bylaws, consent agenda. Bylaws are passed by consent agenda tonight. We have just one bylaw on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Clare. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that is passed. Now moving on to the almost the final item, item number 14, the question period. Now it's your opportunity to ask brief, direct questions of council members about matters of municipal business. At this point, we can excuse all staff from the meeting. It's so if there are operational questions, they can be directed to staff after the meeting. Please email the clerk at porthope.ca. If you do have any operational questions for staff in the clerk's office, we'll put you in touch with the relevant staff member. Please keep your questions concise, and any long preambles are not appropriate. So before speaking, if you could just state your name and ensure that your microphone is on, that would be very helpful. So because we are conducting the meeting virtually, we'll have a slightly different approach. Please click the raise hand button if you would like to ask a question, and the clerk will be monitoring. And if you're on the phone, again, it's *9 to raise your questions. So the clerk, I'm turning this over to the clerk for her assistance. Is there anybody that you see that's got a question for us this evening?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There is one individual who has raised their hand. Their name is Jan Marani. Jan, you have been admitted into the meeting. If you could please unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
I think I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, my name is Jan Marani. I'm the Commodore of the Port Hope Yacht Club. And I just have, I'm making my question quite brief because you guys have been here a long time tonight. I appreciate listening to all of the great things that you've been doing for us in our community. As you may or may not be aware, the Port Hope Yacht Club has been a proud part of the waterfront community since 1962. While we've been temporarily displaced during the radioactive remediation process, we've remained committed to returning and continuing our contributions to the community and the harbor. As I've heard earlier tonight from Scott Cameron, that the remediation in the harbor has been completed and the work on the center pier is moving along at a great pace, which is wonderful. I'm just wondering, my question, and I don't really expect a response tonight, but I would like to be part of future discussions, is could you just share with me if there are any specific plans the town has for the future of the harbor area, and including the center pier? And additionally, what steps can we at the Port Hope Yacht Club take now to proactively support and align with those plans?
First of all, thank you so much, Jan, for coming forward and for this question. And of course, I think we're all very excited to see how the plans for the center pier will unfold. And I think as we are moving forward, we'll definitely take your interest and your questions forward so that we can come back to you with a more accurate and fulsome response. But I do know that we'd like to see some active participation in the future. And I know that it is part of the existing plan that is in place. And I know that Councillor Todd probably wants to add to my answer on that point. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for giving me the chance to speak on this. Hi, Jan. Thanks so much for your question. Jan, one place I would point you towards is if you go to porthope.ca, there actually is a waterfront Riverwalk working plan that the community did spend some time on. Councillor Andrews and myself were both part of that committee. It will certainly give you some indication as to where the community was looking as far as development of that. Of course, that plan is a guideline for future councils. The council of the day will make the final decision on it, and community, of course, will be able to weigh in. But if you wanted to have a bit of an understanding as to where we came and where we're heading, you can find that plan online.
Thank you. I've actually been following the waterfront and working plan, whatever that is, committee, as well as members of different liaison groups throughout the years. So I'm well aware of the things that are going on, and I'm just really hopeful that moving forward we can make some great plans and revitalize that area and get some of our recreational sailors back into that space. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much for coming, and we'll continue to work with you and others in the community to ensure that center pier is the most dynamic space that we can have on offer in our community. I think we're all excited to see it now come back into the fold of those possibilities. So are there any other questions to the clerk?
Madam Mayor, there have been no other hands raised.
Okay, so thank you for facilitating this. Moving on to item number 15, the confirmatory bylaw. It's now time for the confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceedings that took place this evening and provides a formal adoption through bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Less. All in favor? That is passed unanimously. This concludes the business to be covered on today's agenda. We've reached the end. And I'm in a position now to adjourn. Thank you very much for everybody's participation this evening, and good night.
Have a good
Good
night,
night, everyone.